Tony. I'm Mike. We're here to watch World Burn. In this episode, we're doing 1946's The Razor's Edge. Let's see here. It came out in, it's based on a novel of the same name, written in 1944 by William Somerset. How do you pronounce his last name?
Maughan?
Sure.
Maughan.
Yeah, what he said.
So,
it stars Tyrone Power as Larry Darrell, Gene Tierney as Isabel Bradley, John Payne as Gray. I can't pronounce his last name. Doesn't matter. They never say it anyway. Herbert Marshall as W. Somerset.
Maughan.
That guy. Ann Baxter as Sophie, and Clifton Webb as Elliot Templeton. This film had a lot of nominations. Three nominations, as a matter of fact. One for Best Picture, didn't win. One for Best Supporting Actor for Clifton Webb. And the last one for the actress Ann Baxter for his portrayal as Sophie. And she won that shit, and she deserved it.
Absolutely she did. This was a movie that the Hays Code had come into effect. And the book deals with a lot of mature subject matter. And this film pushed out as hard as it could. And so when you watch this through modern eyes, it's a little sanitized. They've cleaned up a lot of the rougher edges that were explored with the characters in the book. But
you say that, sure, there's not like a lot of cussing and stuff like that because of the Hays Code. But all the themes are very modern themes that carry over into today.
And this right here is proof that the world has not changed as much that people would like to think it is.
Not at all.
Because just to kind of quickly, I'm not going to go through this. This is a movie that would be impossible to discuss the plot because it is more or less a character study of Larry Darrell. And the broad strokes are Larry Darrell is a person who served during World War I, and on the last day of the war, a man sacrificed himself to keep Larry alive. And he returned from the war, and he's very scarred about that. He now questions everything. So he returns back to Chicago, and all of his friends are in high society, and there's a lot of rich, uppity, snooty, definitely, those kind of people. That's his social circle. Those are the waters that he swims in, and they don't understand why he's not in a big hurry to come back and go start working, selling bonds or this or that.
He's having a spiritual crisis.
He could have saved himself, but he didn't. He saved me and died. So he's gone, and I'm here alive. Why?
Yeah, an existential crisis. He's really questioning, what am I here for? Why am I here? And again, there's tons of mature themes in this film. That's just the kickoff. That's how we start it all off. And it's all told from the perspective of the gentleman who wrote the actual book. And he's basically recounting the story of this fascinating person that he met, and he knew him for over a decade. And this is the first time that he met him, and every time that he runs to him through the course of a lifetime, up until the last time that he saw Larry Darrell.
Which I think does take place. I think the whole thing does span about a decade, because even at the end during the investigation for Sophie, he says he's known him for a decade. Yeah. And we could do a little more broad strokes than that. So basically, when he comes back, Isabel, who's played by Gene Tierney, is just in love with.
Yes, that was the woman that waited for him to come back from war, and so she's pushing hard for their engagement and marriage, and she wears the ring. Mm-hmm. Larry is basically Uncle Elliot, who is one of the big characters throughout the entirety. He's Elliot. Elliot is Isabel's uncle, and
he's basically this dude doesn't want to really do anything or pursue anything. He's probably not the right guy for you.
Yeah, he's very upper crust. He openly states that he does not approve of the engagement, and he openly states that he is going to do everything he can to try and stop this wedding from happening.
Incidentally, you'll meet the young man my niece has got herself engaged to. His name is Larry Darrell, and I might as well tell you at once that Elliot doesn't approve of him.
I have nothing against him, but he hasn't any money, and my sister's not...
But of course, Jean Tierney isn't... I mean, while she loves the guy, at the same time, she's kind of like somewhat money-focused and stuff like that.
Somewhat?
Very much so. As a matter of fact, and I love the line that Larry gives at the end where they're having where she's professing her love to him, for that last final grasp to try to keep him.
I gave up Larry for one reason only. Because I didn't want to stand in his way.
Oh, come off it, Isabel. You gave him up for a square-cut diamond and a sable coat.
Ooh, that was a scathing fucking burn. It's vicious.
Yes.
I loved it. It's great.
And the thing that's funny is that because of the way that this is written and structured, he gets to see their whole relationship from, when they're supposed to be getting engaged to when. And the thing is that the country club segment ends and Larry and Isabel basically have come to an agreement. He has questions. He wants to learn. He wants to see things. He was in Paris during the war, so he wants to go to Paris and see if he can find what he's looking for. And she agrees to postpone the engagement for at least a year. So he goes to Paris, and Uncle Elliot assumes that he's out sowing his wild oats and doing this and that, and he's going to basically shepherd this young man and make sure he's meets the right people and hangs out with the right. He's basically going to try and turn him into a social climber and someone who is accepted in high society. Larry, on the other hand, he has other ideas. He actually gets back to Paris on a tramp steamer shit, and then he takes crappy jobs like in a coal mine, and he's doing all this manual labor, and he's spending almost all of his time at the library, reading books, meeting people, talking to things. He's exploring philosophy.
So let's fast forward to where they actually start to meet up again, and then Jean Tierney does her next big push, and she decides at the last second. At first, she's going to try to entrap him, sleep with them, get pregnant, and then
send him a cable a month later that says you need to come make an honest woman of me.
Yeah.
It's late, you better go. Oh, Larry, for heaven's sakes, go.
But instead, she has a change of heart, which is probably the only real spot in the movie where she's kind of a good person, I don't know, but
I was going to say one of the themes of this film is that bad people aren't all bad, and good people aren't all good, and this kind of carries out through every one of these characters.
Yeah. So then after that, he goes to India to.
Actually, he goes to work in a coal mine, and he runs into a defrocked priest.
But what about the answers to all those profound questions you have been asking yourself? Don't you know people have been asking the same questions for thousands of years?
Yes, but doesn't the fact that people have been asking those same questions for thousands of years only go to prove that they can't help asking them?
Very good. Very good. You're not altogether stupid.
Okay.
And he has lots of conversations with
them, but
we only get to see the last one. And I love everything about that scene. I love the fact that it is raining outside and that they're coming in and they're covered with dirt and they decide to play cards with the beer and he's like, all the other guys tell me you cheated cards and the priest responds back, well then why do you play with me? He's like, trying to learn how you do it. I think I can learn something from you. That is the core of Larry's character. You know what? Yes, he knows you're swindling him. He knows you're doing him dirty. But he doesn't mean that he's going to write you off as a person. He's not going to write you off as a cheat or a scoundrel or this or that. He's going to look at you as a whole. And because of this, they have this philosophical conversation where the defrocked priest tells him you should go to the East. And he's like, well, did you ever go to the East? And he explains, no, I didn't. You see, I'm on the run. I'm hiding. I don't want to be forgiven. I feel like I don't deserve it. And it's so dark and powerful and fucked up, and it's like 5 minutes of screen time. And that is one of the scenes that I love in this film.
But wouldn't it be better to face the issue and take your punishment?
But you don't know what the punishment is. It's not prison or the hangman's rope. I could face that.
Anyway, from there we come back in with Sophie and Graham, and they're in a car accident, and Sophie's husband and baby Linda are both killed in the car accident, and Sophie does not respond well, and this kind of starts her character down a downward spiral.
Is Bob dead, Gray? Is he dead? You can tell me, Gray.
Yes.
Yeah. So Larry goes to India and he spends time there, and he finds most of his answers there, and you get the grand speech and how you get to the title of The Razor's Edge. If you want to go into that kind of quick.
Yeah, I mean the whole point of it is really, I don't know how to sum this up. There's so much that goes on in the India portion of it that most people just kind of surf through life, and there are those that actually are looking for answers, that are curious, and those are the kind of people that explore things.
Yeah. And the other things he says that there's no right or wrong way of doing it. Everybody goes through their own spiritual journey in their own way. It's like I got our one guy here that's learning he's going to stay here, but he's like, you know what, you don't belong here. You need to go to this mountain and go there and experience stuff. And so he goes to the mountain, and during the course of the sun rising, there was a moment he kind of has like an epiphany, where he's kind of like, well, I was here, but I wasn't here, and it's the first time I felt like I was in touch with like God.
Actually, he states it as he feels that he and God were one.
Yeah.
For that one moment, I had the feeling that
You and God were one.
yes.
Yeah.
Which is super clever, in that they're not like endorsing any one particular religious belief. They're kind of like basically saying, you know what, that's not what it's about.
Yeah.
That's not all what it's about. And after he has this epiphany, and it's a really great scene, and it really shows like Tyrone Power with just a camera pointed at him, and he's having to pull this off with dialogue inside of a little cabin set.
Well, the guy that plays the indie guru was pretty good too, because he does most of the heavy lifting in that one.
And basically Larry says, I'd like to stay here, and the guru tells him, no, you need to go back to where you came from. It is time for you to return, to your life, and take this knowledge with you, and you will learn more as you go. So after he has the spiritual journey, he returns back to Paris, and he discovers that the big Black Friday crash had happened. Gray had basically lost everything and their business.
Which at this point, Gray is married to Isabel, who's Jean Tierney in this case, just in case you forgot. And then he also discovers too that Sophie had lost.
Sophie had lost her husband
Bob
and her child.
Bob and child.
I said Graham earlier. I apologize for that. Screw up. Okay. Anyway, but yeah. So Sophie lost that, and Sophie had more or less gone to pieces. And this kind of shows how mental health was looked at back then, because it wasn't this woman had this tragic loss. She was just off balance, and she was just gonna have a problem sooner or later and just become soused 24/7. And she hangs out with these crappy people. Well, she must really want to be doing that.
She nearly went crazy.
We did all we could to help her, but it was no good. If you asked her to dinner, she'd come in plastered and pass out before the evening was over. Last, we simply had to drop her.
She became impossible.
Of course, it was a shock, and I was terribly sorry for her. But a normal person recovers. If she went to pieces, it was because she was always unbalanced. Even her love for Bob was exaggerated. Aren't I right, Larry?
No, I don't agree with you, Isabel.
It's really dark. It is. It's a real indictment of how people talk about and look at and view the problems of others.
Well, the other thing about that too is these feelings, at least for Isabel, are also spurred on for the fact that she finds out that Sophie and Larry had a bit of a fling before those two got together when they were younger.
They dated.
It's implied.
They dated.
Whatever.
They were both very young. It was before Larry left to go off to war,
Yeah.
and it was when Sophie was still in school, and
but it doesn't matter. So once she finds that out, Isabel becomes extremely jealous, and at that point is there to set up Sophie's downfall, and executes it very well, unfortunately.
Scarily so.
Scarily so, yeah.
But we also find out that Gray has been suffering from, he had a nervous breakdown, he's suffering from massive headaches, he had suicidal thoughts, he felt responsible for ruining all these, farmers and families, and whereas Isabel's happy to just write off the fact that, people lost money. Gray sees it that these people lost their livelihoods and their savings and their lives and their pensions and this and that.
Yeah, and feels responsible, yeah.
He feels responsible for it, whereas Isabel's just kind of coasting through life, kind of oblivious to the suffering of others.
So Larry comes in to visit, and it's the first time they see him, and so this is where you discover this is really the Doctor Strange origin story, because he comes back with all these new powers, superpowers.
Not necessarily powers.
Sorry, this is bullshit. I'm just being stupid.
Yeah.
No, but he comes back with like a sense. I don't know how to describe it, but like some knowledge.
Yes, knowledge most definitely.
Yeah.
Larry learned about hypnotism while he was in India, and he uses a technique to help relieve Larry of his headaches that have basically crippled him and made him a shut-in, and teaches him, how to move past his pain and start actually living again.
Here. Close your fingers tightly on this. Palm downward. Now don't fight me. Don't make any effort. Just squeeze the coin with your closed fist. Before I count 10, your hand will open and the coin will drop out of it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
Which I find that ironic because, and this is one of the brilliant things about the film, is that while everybody's enthralled with what Larry does for Gray and how he cured his headaches and made this go away and he no longer having dark suicidal thoughts, when it comes to Sophie dealing with her grief for losing her child and her husband, all of a sudden it's like, oh, you're wasting your time. She's so not worth it. She's completely, she wants to live like this.
Well, these are also, again...
But it's not just from Isabel. It's also from Gray as well. He actually says some shit in the back of the car. And that's kind of... The only one that doesn't say anything about it is... Somerset.
I was going to call him Somerset because it's the easy way to remember him.
Sure, Somerset is fine. He doesn't say anything about it. He understands why Larry would want to do it, but he also understands that that's Larry's nature. And it's announced shortly after this that, Larry has got Sophie to quit drinking, and
they're engaged to be married.
They are engaged to be married, and as you can imagine, this upsets Isabel greatly. As she...
And that's when she orchestrates Sophie's downfall.
Yes.
And... spoilers here. She ends up at the bottom of the lake with her throat slit.
Harbor.
Whatever this was. Yeah. So it was a tragic end there.
Yes.
And so Larry confronts Isabel about this towards the end there after she professes her love. He's like, "You did this."
Well, actually, several things happen. Uncle Elliot dies. Isabel inherits everything from his estate, which is substantial.
Yes.
And so much so that, Gray could actually go back to America and reopen his father's business again and get that going. And Isabel plainly states, I plan on seeing a lot of Larry. I'm a married woman. I've had my 2 children. I can do what I want now because I've got all the monies. And she goes to Larry with this, and Larry more or less says, I know what you did. I know why you did it. It was wrong on all counts, and I want nothing to do with you.
Dead?
Her body was found in the harbor at Toulon. She'd been murdered.
Oh, how horrible. Do they know who did it?
No. But I do.
And this destroys Gene Tierney, and that's
the end of the movie.
That's the end of the movie. There's a lot of nuance to it. We have in no means covered everything that goes on in this film. There is just so much packed into its runtime, and it's so efficiently done. This is not a movie you can watch with on low attention span. So you had talked about Sophie's incredible performance.
Yes.
She is one of, I think, the most fascinating parts of this movie. And
Paris is all right, isn't it?
Well, I don't...
Well, look who's here.
Sophie.
Who should think it was?
And I think that she is definitely one of the strongest performances in this movie.
Yes.
In a movie filled with strong performances. I will say this. At times it can feel a little dated, a little stodgy.
Mm-hmm.
You can definitely tell it is a product of its time. But the fascinating thing about this movie, and this movie is not an accident. Number one, it was one of the highest, as far as Fox paid $50,000 to the rights to the film. Then they agreed to a percentage of the box office on top of that.
Good God.
And then...
So, what's his name? Somerset made out like a bandit.
Somerset was doing just fine. And then on top of all that, if they didn't begin production by a specific period of time, they were supposed to pay him another $50,000. So, and this is 1946 money. So that was the real deal back then. He was not hurting by any stretch of the imagination, but... the story goes that while multiple books of his have been adapted for film, this one in particular, he actually wrote the screenplay. This was a passion project for him. And he wrote the screenplay for it, but because of the amount of time it had spent in pre-production and because of a lot of hemming and hawing from the Hays Code and everything that was going on behind the scenes and what they couldn't do, by the time they actually got to the shooting script, not a single word that he had written actually appeared in the final version of the film.
Really?
Yes. And so he never wrote another screenplay for Hollywood ever again after this.
Well, I don't blame him.
So he did not enjoy the process of that. And this is a guy that obviously tackled really heavy subjects. Yes. And it's not a coincidence when this film came out. This film was pushed big time because this came out in 1946, the year after World War II ended. Soldiers were returning from the front lines, from both the Pacific Front and the European Front, and they were going to be dealing with a lot of this shit as well. Yeah. And so Fox knew what they were doing when they put this out there, and they put it out there because they knew they had a very specific audience targeted for this. So this was a huge hit for Fox. Don't feel bad for them.
By the way, the budget on this was $1.4 million or 1.5, and it brought in $5 million.
So it quintupled its money. This was actually Tyrone Power's first film when he finished his military service.
Okay.
So, and just to go into Tyrone Powers a little bit, Tyrone Powers was the real fucking deal. He did romance, he did swashbuckling films, he did every genre of film imaginable, and he really wanted to be considered one of the great actors. He was a huge star during his time. He was a massive box office draw. But in 1942, when World War II broke out, we went to war in December of 41, he signed up. He enlisted in the Marines. He actually had his pilot's license already, but he was considered too old for combat pilot.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Huh. Now, and I bring this up for a reason. So what he wound up doing was he wound up flying cargo planes for the Marines, and the reason that he flew cargo planes was because he wanted to be as close to the action as possible, and he was not only flying in supplies to the troops, but he was actually flying wounded soldiers out. And he served for 3 years. So he's the real deal. Unlike John Wayne, who never served, and why he's seen as the manly man. John Wayne was a pussy. Okay, Marion was a Tyrone Powers was Tyrone Powers' name. He didn't need anybody to be all like, well, what sounds kind of cool and cowboyish. So there's that.
Well, name and reputation.
Yeah. But he came back, and the funny thing about it is, he did this film. He lobbied for this film. He wanted to be in this movie. And a lot of that has to do with, this was the first movie that he did after he had finished his military service. So he came back and he did this one. And I think he wanted to do this one because he was able to bring that presence that I know what it's like to be in a combat zone. I know what it's like to be a soldier. Yeah. I know all that. So he did this one. And then right after he did this one, he lobbied to do Nightmare Alley, which we did a review of the remake of that from Guillermo del Toro just last week. And the reason that I find this all fascinating is, first off, he lobbied to get that film made. Fox didn't want to do it, and they didn't want Tyrone Power involved in it because he was a leading man, and that film showing him as this dirty, scummy con man, they thought that was beneath him. It would damage his reputation. So that was number one. Number two, they put the film out, and it got huge, glowing reviews. And then after it had been in release for several weeks, Fox pulled the film out of rotation. And they said it was a box office flop.
Oh, and why did they do that?
They were terrified that it was getting popular and that it was going to damage Tyrone Powers as a brand. And so much so that they buried it until 2005 when it was finally released on DVD. It had not been seen since 1946.
Freaking studios.
So I get that it was an investment and they were protecting their contract player because Tyrone Powers, for all that, he did sign a contract exclusively with Fox 3 times. He was loaned out once for MGM, but when Fox saw the movie, they were like, you took our leading man, you took our star, and you put him in a supporting role. We're never loaning him out again. And they tried. They offered him a role in Gone with the Wind. They offered him a role in a bunch of huge movies. And Fox was very protective of their cash cow.
Let's change gears real quick and talk about Gene Tierney,
Oh.
who the previous review we did was Leave Her to Heaven,
Yeah.
where she plays a suffering bitch in that one too. So does Gene Tierney play any likable roles?
Oh yeah, she did a bunch of roles where she was just the beautiful romantic lead.
Okay. And is there anything you would recommend from her?
Oh God.
Because I know she's like one of your favorites, so I'm sure there's got to be like a couple.
She did a couple of film noirs. She did a couple. You caught me like off guard here. I'm like all in Tyrone Powerville here.
Well, I love me a noir, so if you can give me something to watch.
Let me come back to that one. I want to say this. What did you think of this film? I guess we should start there before we get dirty, because I've been watching this film since I was 16. I deeply love this film, and I have loved this film since the first time I saw it.
This is one of the first movies we were actually. This is on the list that we haven't followed in forever, but when we first decided we were going to do this, Razor's Edge was one of the first movies that popped out of his mouth. So after watching it, I enjoy it. Now, granted, at the beginning of this, when we started doing this wouldn't have been my bag at all. But I do enjoy it, and I've developed an appreciation for these old-time classics and things like that. Am I going to recommend this to the majority of audiences? I'm not. You need some type of gateway. I don't think it's a proper gateway to kind of old-timey type of stuff like this.
No, it's not.
And that's something we need to do. We should do a gateway.
Easing people into watching classic film.
Because, again, while I wouldn't recommend it to anybody, if you're a film aficionado and stuff like that, it's an absolute solid film. It deals with every single modern topic, almost 80 something years ago.
Yeah.
So I mean, if you think that, this you can't relate to the subject matter, you absolutely can. And the good thing about this too is, while it's an old-timey film, a lot of the performances aren't very old-timey, especially
Uncle Elliot.
Well, not really them, but Ann Baxter, who plays Sophie.
Yes.
Yesterday at the Ritz was tough going.
I know, I saw it.
Did you? Did I show it?
Only to me, I think. It meant something to me.
Yes.
Is very much a modern actor's take.
Yes.
I mean, she sells it without being hammy about it. It's nuanced when it needs to be nuanced, and it's heavy when it needs to be heavy.
Come with me now. I'll buy you a drink someplace else.
Come.
Take your hands off me. I don't need you. I don't need anyone.
And
She's tragic when it needs to be tragic.
And you feel every bit of it. And she delivers it very well. She shines head and shoulders above Gene Tierney in this movie. And Gene Tierney is no lightweight. So I mean, that says a lot. Yeah, it's a solid film. If you're a film aficionado, yes, check it out. If you're a casual observer, not yet. We'll find something here for you.
Okay, so there's a scene that I want to talk about, and it is chock full of really memorable moments. And it's not a big dramatic scene. As a matter of fact, it is the engagement luncheon for Larry and Sophie. They've announced that they're getting engaged, and they decide they're going to take them to the Ritz to go to lunch. And in just the course of a few minutes, and with almost no dialogue, you find Uncle Elliot's health is starting to take a downward turn, and he's not allowed to have alcohol, and his whole life is all about the social calendar and big elaborate parties and basically treating the upper echelon in the manner of which they're accustomed to. And everything prim and proper, it's the right people, the right places, doing the right things. It's all very important to Uncle Elliot. And I'm not, the film doesn't portray that in a damning way. It portrays it, and that's just who he is. That is what he was raised to do and be. And if he was played by a lesser actor, he would come off as an absolute hateable asshole. But his performance is so good that you're like, wow, you just said that. You're an asshole, but you're a really likable asshole. You can't help but not like the guy.
Yeah.
So you got that going on. And then you have that scene where he asks for the perestroika. It's a Polish liqueur. And he hasn't had it for years. And he asks to see the bottle. And then he sniffs it. And he's like, oh, this takes me back. All the memories, all this, all that. And he decides that he's going to have a glass. And Sophie, who has finally dried out, she has not had a drink. To watch her face when she's struggling with everybody else drinking around her and how much she's trying to not want it. And then to watch Gene Tierney's face watching her, waiting for her to break, with no dialogue whatsoever. And then to see it flash to Tyrone Powers, where he has this moment where he's proud that she said no to it, and he's reassuring to her, and then he sees like the look that's going on with Gene Tierney, and the fact that Gene Tierney is measuring up Sophie. It all plays out with no dialogue, while Uncle Elliot is going on and on about how wonderful this liqueur is.
I don't care whether Sophie's on the wagon or not, she must try this. It's an experience no one can miss. It's like listening to music by moonlight.
I'd rather not.
Isabel?
I smell.
That's the herbs they put in it.
Oh, very good. Can we have some of this at the apartment?
Certainly, I'll have a few bottles sent around.
What did you say it was like, Uncle Elliot? Like listening to music by moonlight.
And it's so modern, so nuanced, so beautifully executed. I love that scene. I love every performance in it, even though the dialogue is a little hammy and over the top. All the facial gestures, all of the emotion, and at no point is it like played for laughs or played up or over exaggerated. It's all very believable.
Yeah, it's a solid drama from the word go.
So
yeah, it was unexpected from the title. I was expecting something called The Razor's Edge. I was expecting some action. Didn't get it, but it's fine. it's a good film. I enjoyed it.
And the other thing is that for as as existential as Larry Darrell's quest is through the course of the film, and even though he does not find everything that he's looking for, the ending is satisfying.
Yeah.
Because he establishes who he is outside of his social circle. And ultimately he decides, yeah, you know what, I don't want to be a part of that. He doesn't decide that he can't be a part of it. He decides he doesn't choose to be a part of it. That's not who he is or what he wants to be or what he aspires to be. And it's admirable. And that last scene, the big payoff on this, the big meltdown between Isabel and Larry, it's so satisfying without being vindictive or cruel. I love everything about this movie, and I watch it and I can see the flaws that are in it that have surfaced over 80 years of this film floating around. But it just endears me to it. How much shit they handle, from the death of a spouse and a child to nervous breakdowns and mental health and alcoholism and drug use, and they cover all this in 2 hours and 30 minutes, and they do it in a way that is convincing to a modern audience. But no, I agree with Mike. This is not a film for everybody. This is, if you don't like character studies or drama that doesn't rely on melodrama, who's fucking who and how often and will they or won't they, if that's more your bag, this is not your film, because they ain't, they won't, it doesn't, but that's not what it's about. But if you do watch The Razor's Edge and you do enjoy this film, I would recommend you go and you watch the adaptation of Ernest Hemingway's The Sun Also Rises, which again stars our boy Tyrone. And it is actually was done in the early 50s. It's in Technicolor, and it's a beautiful film, and it is a wonderful adaptation of another literary masterpiece, and that one's great too. That was kind of where I wanted to get to with that. Was Tyrone Power has done action films. He has done the big swashbucklers. He has done war films. He has done, you name it. He's done it, and he's done it all so much better than so many actors. And the sad part of it is, Tyrone Powers died at 44 of a heart attack.
Oh shit!
Yeah.
Oh wow, that's a shame.
He had signed with Fox for his third contract. He was making films, and I want to say he died in 56. And he died while his wife was 7 months pregnant. And his child was born 2 months after he had passed away.
Oh.
Yeah, so he's a fascinating guy. It's sad that he's forgotten. It's sad that he did all this wonderful work, and most people are like, who the hell is Tyrone Powers? So,
well, this is my first introduction to him, so I'm actually going to find the original version of Nightmare Alley so I can watch that and enjoy that. Yeah. Which kind of leads up to, well, if there's anything else you want to cover real quick.
There was a remake of The Razor's Edge that was done in, I believe, 84. Weirdly, it stars Bill Murray, and that one's a bit more gratuitous.
So did you actually watch that?
I've seen bits of it. I can't bring myself to do it because I don't buy Bill Murray. I know Bill Murray wanted to try to do some heavy dramatic roles, but I saw enough of it to know that it's not my bag. And the part of it that I saw was the scene with the ambulance in World War I, the ambulance up in the front. It was like
we don't need to see that type of stuff anyway. It's left out of the original film. We don't need to see it in like this.
Some remakes, totally worth it. One day I'll sit down and get through the entire thing, but as it stands, Bill Murray was a miscast. There are so many actors from that time period that would have worked much better. I would love to see this movie with Brad Pitt from 20 years ago. Brad Pitt is a character actor in a leading man's body, and it's very much the same as Tyrone Power. He was a good-looking man who had a lot of ability, and he loved his craft. But on top of it, he wasn't just his craft, unlike John Wayne, who was nothing but... I'm sorry, Marion, who was a phony. He loved to storm the sands of Iwo Jima from the safety of somewhere in Hawaii where they were shooting with the film crew. Never served, and yet somehow he's some sort of bullshit American icon, but people don't remember Tyrone Power.
With the safety of the stuntman.
I can hear him bitching about the temperature of his coffee not being hot enough. So,
anything else you need to say about this one?
We finally got to cover a movie that I'm not conflicted about, one that I genuinely love and am passionate about, and I really do love this film. Anything else?
Just ask me to watch it next.
What are we watching next?
We are watching Excalibur.
Oh, shit.
The ultimate King Arthur movie, and I will fight anybody that says otherwise.
And I'll be there to help him fight your ass. So like, comment, subscribe, do that shit down there, and we will
see you guys
catch
next
you next
time.
time.